Ever have your secretary pop her head in and say, Mr. Jones has called for the 10th time today, and he's calling to find out what the status is, and nothing has changed since this morning or even yesterday. How do you stop this? Welcome to Front Porch Lawyer, where we explore the humanity and emotional intelligence of lawyering. I'm Francine, your host. So why are these clients calling all the time? And who's responsible for this? What can you do about it? Well, sometimes it's about taking accountability when you aren't the person to blame. So years ago, I was living in Germany. And one morning on February 14, 1977, I got in my little blue Fiat and I was driving to the army base nearby. Right after I entered an intersection on a green light, a huge German beer truck barreled into the intersection and broadsided me. My car spun 360 and then some, and then the truck hit me again. I sat there pinned in my car, unable to move. Somebody cut out the front door eventually, and they started getting me out of the car, and the medics slowly moved me out, put me on a gurney, and put me in an ambulance, and rushed me to the local army dispensary. Well, when I got there, I guess they couldn't help me, and they put me on a helicopter and sent me to the Nuremberg Army Hospital, which was a full-fledged military hospital with battle-trained physicians and nurses. I was in emergency pretty much the whole day. It wasn't until dark that they rolled me into ICU, at which point they told me, finally, you're stable. And then it was about half an hour later, the doctors came rushing in, told me, you're bleeding internally, and unless we do surgery, you're going to die. So they rushed me into emergency surgery. And I was there for over 14 hours while they patched me back. When I woke the next day, I guess, my abdomen was covered with stitches and staples. I had tubes that I couldn't even count coming out of all over the place. And I looked as if I had been in battle. I lay bedridden for 3 weeks. And then came the rehabilitation. And after 3 weeks of being bedridden, I'd forgotten how to walk. Just standing was a monumental task. It took months of painful rehab before I could stand upright and walk normally. Since then, I've had recurring medical problems because of this one incident. For years, I thought of that truck driver. For years, I blamed him for my misery. For years, I blamed him for every single problem that I had, and I suffered. Until one day, I don't know what prompted it, but I asked myself this question: what did I do to contribute to that situation? I asked, had I looked left and right, even though I was entering on a green, could I have avoided being hit? Now, the military police back then said the guy smelled of beer. So I may not have been able to change the outcome. I don't know. But just asking that question of myself made me start thinking about my accountability. Not my fault, not my blame, my accountability. And from that day forward, I stopped thinking about the truck driver. I started thinking about my accountability and not his blame or his responsibility. It changed my life, and it changed the way I look at things in life. This thought completely turned my life around, and turned my life around the way I deal with clients even. So I asked these questions: what did I contribute to the situation, or what can I do to influence the outcome? So your clients feel the way I did in 1977 and all those years during which time I suffered. They're looking for someone to blame. They're looking for someone to be responsible for their pain, whatever that is. It could be pain, physical pain, it could be emotional pain, it could be mental pain, but it is a form of pain that they're suffering from. They're angry, they're resentful, they're feeling out of control, feeling uncertain, and all that is pain in our minds. This incessant calling that they have, that they keep calling you about, is to try to address this pain. Now you can become the person and be the person that I became. Be the person who takes accountability. Of course, it's not your fault. You're not to blame for their situation. You're not to blame for their pain, their anger, their resentment, their uncertainty. You didn't create this. Well, I hope you didn't. If you don't return phone calls, you might have created some of it. But generally speaking, you didn't create any of this. But can you become accountable? And the answer is yes. Because by becoming accountable, you can influence the outcome for yourself and your client. So here are 5 things that you can actually do to take accountability and influence the outcome and impact how many times your client actually calls you every single day. Number 1, acknowledge how your client feels. Let them know that you understand and care. If it were me you were talking to, I would want you to say to me, I understand it's painful that this truck driver barreled into you and caused all these problems. I would need to know that you understood my pain and you actually care about it. Your clients need to hear that from you. 2, set clear boundaries and tell your client that you chunk your time so that you can get the work done for them and all the other people that hire you. This is why they hired you. For example, my clients hire me for doing appeals, and I reserve big chunks of time for record review. I mean, I've got volumes and volumes of records that I have to review, and if I keep getting interrupted, I'll never get through them. I need chunks of time to research and chunks of time to writing briefs. And you, no matter what kind of law you practice, you need to chunk your time as well so that you get things done timely and quickly so that you're not interrupted. The clients need to know this. And during those times, I tell them, I don't want to have to answer phone calls because it interrupts my workflow, it interrupts my brain process. And that means I have to start again, and it's going to cost them twice as much. If the first part doesn't work, tell the second part. If you say it clearly and explain why, they will understand. I tell them it's not because I don't want to talk to them. It's not because their case isn't important. It's because this is what you hired me to do, and this is what all my clients hired me to do, so let me do my job. I tell them that if I have to answer all your questions, I won't be able to get the work done that they hired me to do. But one thing I do is I do return phone calls every single day. 3, introduce your clients to your staff. They are a great resource. And when you introduce them to your staff, make sure you do so with respect of your staff. Extol your staff. Tell them how amazing your staff is, because they are amazing. And they can answer so many of these questions. And give your staff some opportunities to get to know the client so they can also show empathy to the client, hold their hand a little bit, do whatever it takes to keep the client calmer than they otherwise would have been. 4, if you're using a case management software, you need to cover this, which is you need to make sure client knows that the case management software is not designed to take care of things like status updates when the client is feeling upset about something. It's not there designed to give you an opportunity to avoid taking the phone call from the client. Remember, automation, which is what these case management softwares are designed to do, is to prevent you from having to repeat the same task over and over and over again. That's the beauty of automation. But when you are dealing with unique situations, you generally need to pick up the phone and deal with the unique situation. And 5, give clients timelines so that they have an idea of what's going to happen next or how long it's going to take for something to happen. For example, I do appeals, and appeals take a long time for things to happen. And the Court of Appeal is never going to reach any kind of decision or even think about considering a case until all the briefing has been done. I need to make sure my clients understand this. Otherwise, about 3 months after the notice of appeal has been filed, they're looking for a decision, and we haven't even filed the first brief. One caution on timelines, though. Be sure to let them know that these are guidelines, and you may have to revisit this a little bit and let them know they're guidelines, kind of like the Pirates Code. They're guidelines, not rules. And so you may have to revisit that a few times so the client remembers that they be guidelines and not rules. So don't expect your clients to take on the accountability torch. They're the ones in pain. And when your mind is in that place, it's really hard to be accountable. They're still feeling the pain of being hit by a beer truck, which means you have to carry the accountability torch for them. But when you do take up that torch, it makes your life so much better. That's how not only do you reduce the calls, but you will reduce clients getting irritated with you, and you'll actually get more work done. Thanks for joining me on my front porch. This is Francine Tone and from Porch Lawyer, and please send me your comments or your feedback, and I'll see you next time.